Hi, my name is Helen Wood.
I'm Merle Nye.
Alex Yoshizumi.
There we go. And together, Merle, Alex, and I had the pleasure of working on the Basque Connections Coal in America research team. Our work's primarily was centered in central Appalachia, a region of the country that includes Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, and Kentucky. Yeah, there we go. So a little bit more about our project. Over the past 2 semesters, our team has worked to synthesize social and economic stories from coal miners and their families with economic data and analysis to better understand the impact of mining and of mining in the coal industry on these communities. So really, our project has different aspects, and one is oral history, another is data analysis and data collection, but we're gonna start with that oral history component. Our work really started last May as part of a Story Plus project with the Franklin Humanities Institute. With this project, Dr. Jonathan Free, Alex, I, and a few other team members were able to actually travel to Central Appalachia and conduct oral history interviews with different members of these communities. We returned in the fall and even over spring break to talk to members in places like Lynch, Kentucky. In total, we conducted 23 interviews with 26 participants. Through these interviews, we learned that these coal communities are really unique, and I think that's really well communicated by the story of Mike Obradovich. Mike's father was an immigrant who was born in Montenegro. When he arrived in Ellis Island, he was recruited by U.S. Steel to come work in a coal mine in Lynch, Kentucky. His mother was German. In total, Mike estimates that 50 different nationalities were represented in Lynch at one time. At age 54, Mike's father died of black lung disease. Mike himself was only 4 years old. By age 16, Mike saw mechanization lead to massive job layoffs and turnover in the mine that was centered in Lynch, Kentucky. He ended up emigrating out of the area and going to parts of the Midwest before being recruited and returning to Lynch later on when there was another coal boom. When he did so, he found that there were massive changes in the community, not only due to the mechanization, but because the mine was bought out by a different company that maybe valued production over maybe the community itself. Over the course of this project, we've collected all of these stories, and one of the goals for this project is to synthesize these into an online archive that's available through a website the team will put together in the years to come. That way, researchers can look at stories like Mike's and learn a little bit more about the social impacts of the coal industry. I'm going to pass it over to Merle, who's going to tell us a little bit more about the data aspect of the project.
All right, so at the start of our project, we divided the history of the coal industry in America into 3 distinct time periods. And as we dove into a number of qualitative research on those 3 time periods, a common theme that came up was that we needed a quantitative background with which we could contrast the trends we were seeing in those texts. Unfortunately, such a data set didn't exist, so we did a little searching, and one of our teammates, June Shepard, happened upon an archive on the Bureau of Mines website that actually had county-level coal production and employment data dating back to the 1930s. The problem was this data was in an inconsistent format, so it was impossible to convert this data into a manipulatable format using a conversion software, which meant we punched in cells in Excel over 50 hours and 36,000 cells, validating and then revalidating the data. But what we ended up with was a never-before-compiled data set of this coal production that would allow us to not only contrast the trends we saw in our prior research with the trends in the raw production data from the period, but it also allowed us to visualize data in a way that we could hone in our research on certain time periods or trends to further research or conduct oral interviews about. Another use for this data is on the team's eventual website, we'll use it to communicate our findings with the public in the forms of interactive maps and charts, or animations like this one you can see on my left that portrays the trade-off between Weiss and Buchanan as the top coal-producing counties in Virginia.
So looking back over everything that we've done, it's really culminated in a report on coal in Appalachia, in which we looked at that first time period from 1946 to 1962 to better understand the drivers of decreasing employment during that time period, and then compared and contrasted it with the most recent time period from 2001 to present. So in practice, what that looks like, that first time period was really defined by large shifts from underground mining to surface mining. Simultaneously, we also saw that there was increased mechanization in underground mining, and then finally, large decreases in consumption from both the transportation and residential sectors. In the most recent time period, we found that it was really defined by decreases in natural gas prices and increased renewables penetration, decreasing employment. Simultaneously, we also saw that there was a large geographic shift towards Western coal. And then also we noted that the financial crisis in the late 2000s had a large impact. So looking forward, we're really excited for the 2019-2020 Coal in America team, as they'll be expanding research into new regions, collecting new oral histories, continuing archival research, comparing and contrasting between new regions and new time periods, and then finally launching the Coal in America website. So in summary, I think stepping into new research is sort of like stepping into a coal mine, in that if you've never been there before, it can be pretty easy to get lost. But fortunately, we had an incredible team of people and some really amazing advisors. So I just want to thank them so much and thank all of you for listening to our story. Thanks so much.